Welcome to Enlightenment Strikes, brought to you by Saving Cities. I'm Jack Story, and in each episode, a member of our team hosts a conversation with an expert in a place-related field. That could be anything from accessibility to zoning and everything in between. Today's guest is Emily Wazlak, the founder and CEO of Shine Registry, a platform for business owners and entrepreneurs to ask for startup needs in the style of a wedding registry. Her company is changing the way that communities interact with entrepreneurs and reimagining the relationship between women and ambition. She's also an organizer of the Forge Fellowship in partnership with the Roosevelt Institute, which empowers and supports community college students across the United States to organize and build civic infrastructure in their communities. Let's get to it. So thank you for doing this again. And I wanted to start immediately just by asking you a little bit about your background. I don't know a whole ton about you outside of just having met you through our mutual friend, Reese Nieder.
Sure. So my name is Emily. I grew up in Queens, New York, and currently I'm the founder CEO of Shine Registry, which is a platform for women who are starting businesses so that they can ask for the stuff that they need using best practices from crowdfunding platforms as well as traditional registry sites. We believe in creating new spaces for communities to show up and care for people as they bring new ideas into the world. And before getting involved in startups, my background was in political organizing and advocacy. And so I worked on the Obama campaign in 2012 in Toledo. I knew our buddy Reese through work at the Roosevelt Institute, where I worked on youth organizing and policy advocacy, and then lived in DC for a little bit before moving to Pittsburgh, where I went to grad school at Carnegie Mellon and started Shine Registry.
What'd you go to school for?
For grad school, I went to school for public policy, and I think that I've taken like a few different turns career-wise and professionally, but the underlying thing has always been an interest in bringing communities into conversations that they didn't necessarily see themselves as being a part of previously. That was the strongest and biggest motivator for me in policy work, and it continues to be a big motivator for like the why of building and creating Shine Registry today.
So I'm going to steal a little bit of your framework from your website, but what is your relationship with ambition? I love that line a lot, but I think it's fitting because you're talking about public policy, which is inherently not entrepreneurial, but to take that mindset and to shift it over to creating a small business, there's something that has to happen there mentally to kind of prepare you for that, right? I did it too. I took on graduate student loan debt halfway through, kind of knowing that debt was going to be worth it, but not necessarily career trajectory oriented. So what was that like for you? What was that process for you?
I think that that's interesting. I feel like you asked me three really hard questions all at the same time.
Pick whichever one you like.
Trying to work through them. I'll start with your question about like having a relationship with ambition. I think that that's one of the things that we say one of the ways that we talk about Shine Registry is that it's a registry for your relationship with ambition. And I think one of the things that's important to point out about that is that it's not just for the person who's creating a registry, but it's also for the community around you, and their understanding of how they can support and celebrate the ambition of an individual.
Sure.
That's pretty core to who we are too, is that, there's all this muscle memory that's built around how we support people in their personal lives. But it's often like the moments in either your professional life or your creative life, or whatever else it might be, that that also requires support, and that we can all use like a little bit of space to let our communities in for that. Um, and as far as like switching from being really policy focused to getting into the like entrepreneurship space, in some ways, like it felt pretty natural to me. I mean, I was in a position too where my last job before grad school, I was working with folks who, it was a government office, and there were people in my office who had been there for like 40 years. And so while the work was like theoretically very interesting, uh, it was also very bureaucratic, and I had a very clear sense of what my life would look like if I stayed. And it wasn't really a situation that I thought made a lot of sense for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I was starting to like have conversations with people who were talking about social innovation and the ways that people were building stuff that was very like design focused and sort of like outside of these like bureaucratic structures. And I mean, I think that's something that we're all sort of experiencing now, where government is no longer necessarily like the front line of social change the way it has been in the past. I mean, we have uh, everything that's happened in Silicon Valley in the past 10, 20 years that's kind of proven that out. And I often wonder if I had graduated like 4 years later or 8 years later, if I would have moved to DC after graduation, or if I would have moved to San Francisco instead, because of that shift. But so for me, again, like it really just comes back to like what tools communities have to have a voice and have a say in the way things happen, and where those conversations are happening. So I don't know, that's like a little bit of a roundabout answer, but I think
No, it's
that was
good.
like a little.
I think you did a wonderful job taking all three of those very ridiculous questions. So you've touched on this and done an admirable job as a founder, making sure that you have already kind of woven in the what is the Shine Registry component. But straightforwardly, what is it?
So we're a platform for folks starting businesses to ask for what they need. And so if you can ask for a gravy boat when you get married, there's all the stuff that you need when you start a company. And so as it exists, I mean, folks create their profiles and put up the lists of monetary and non-monetary asks that they have. So we have a little over 300 people who are currently using the site, but hopefully by the time this podcast is released, that number goes up again. But folks are asking for everything from network connections to these are the equipment costs that I have. And we're pretty deliberate in building this in a way that there's a wider breadth of ways that people can engage with the individuals that they want to support, and also the businesses that they want to support. And you know, we're having a lot of fun building out the tools that people can do that.
So I saw recently that Elon Musk was behind you in saying this idea. You were ahead of Elon Musk, and that's gotta feel nice. You've had this idea for quite some time now.
So you're talking about the meme that kind of blew up on LinkedIn and a few other places. Yeah, that pops up every now and then. As far as anyone can tell, he didn't actually say
We don't have to
anything
tell
that was
anybody
in
that.
that. So should I?
We can just lean in on it. You can just enjoy it. You're
We can just
definitely
claim an
ahead of the
endorsement.
curve on Elon Musk.
I mean, it is funny. I think that there's the Elon Musk meme, and there's a few tweets and things like that over the past years have like consistently, like every few months, kind of go viral. I think we saw like another wave um of these memes around business showers going viral again in like the past 2 or 3 months. And I think it's reflective of a few things. It's a reflective of like an increased sense of urgency that people have had over the past few months to figure out ways of supporting small businesses when,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we know that a lot of folks are in crisis mode and survival mode, and going through the contingency plan B, C, and D. And I think there's also like it's also a reflection of the founder experience. The Elon Musk meme is fine, but I there are a lot of tweets of founders who have kind of like recognized that, I'm doing something that is inherently really lonely, and I'm having a really difficult time communicating to my typical social support network, like precisely what's going on. And I wish I could borrow from existing traditions where that is made possible. And so I think the fact that that's gone viral several times has been really telling. I also am really proud of the fact that like several of the women who've had viral tweets talking about business showers have now signed on to Shine Registry since we've gotten in touch with them. And on top of that, like business showers are becoming more of a thing. I mean, we started hosting virtual ones when the pandemic started. But again, I mean, I think it's a repurposing of this muscle memory that people already have, that resonates with people really strongly, especially now. Yeah. So if someone wants to tell Elon Musk that he has officially endorsed us, that'd be great.
I'll send him an email.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. So let's talk a little bit about how this moment in time has shaped a little bit of how the future of this will work. And I think there's probably some stuff that won't revert, if I had to guess, even once this moment in time has passed with COVID. You mentioned moving some stuff into virtual showers. How has that been going, and what are some of the benefits you've seen from that? The silver lining, if you will, that you didn't necessarily think about before you were forced to think about it.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I was really nervous about virtual events when we first started, in part because I think there was just a lot of uncertainty about how much excitement from meeting people in real life was going to be like we were realistically able to recreate. I've been very pleasantly surprised by how engaged our audiences have been for our online workshops and our virtual events. I think that one of the unexpected benefits has been we've been able to connect with people that we just had no idea would be interested in connecting with us, and in part because of like space and time has just opened up in different ways. So we ran a virtual business shower for Kweza Craft Brewery, which is based in Rwanda. They're the first craft brewery in Rwanda, and I mean, kind of by default of being the first craft brewery in Rwanda, they're also women led and women owned, and so they're also the first women owned brewery in Rwanda. But we were able to host this incredible event with them where we had their master brewer on. We had participants from all over the world. I think we had audience members from like Sweden and Canada and like all different parts of the US. And there was a distributor there was somebody who participated in the online event who like unmuted their mic at one point. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? Like, why are you unmuting your mic? It turned out she was a distributor based in New York, who's been looking to tap into African craft breweries. So
perfect.
Like unexpected things that like, I don't know if we ever would have thought to I don't know if we ever thought we would be hosting an international event. But because we've been hosting these virtual events and because everyone like is attending them because that's the thing that you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like opened our eyes to how to how people want to show up for other people right now. And it's kind of like expanded our vision around that too a bit. I mean, I would also say that like, I think I've already said this once, but like there is this increased sense of urgency around supporting small business owners, supporting folks in your community. And I think that we're all feeling that on multiple levels where being in quarantine or whatever phase your region happens to be in. I mean, we're seeing the real impact of like what isolation means for people and what it means to go beyond like caring for yourself, but to really start considering what community care looks like in crisis mode and beyond. And I think that that's the thing that I'm I'm hopeful for is that like what we've seen with mutual aid networks gaining a lot of traction in this time, and what we've seen in, I think, like the advocacy that is growing around like the ways that communities can be safer and can be more resilient moving forward. I mean, I'm hopeful that more of that vocabulary is becoming more prevalent and will become more prevalent in action as well.
I hope so too. Certainly, I think that is a thing that I am seeing more of across the spectrum of different businesses and nonprofits. I mean, everybody's kind of leaning in on that a bit harder. And I think that if we can maintain that once we get out of this, which is critical, it was critical before coronavirus, and it's going to be even more critical after. And I think that's part of that silver lining. I haven't figured out a better way to say that yet, right? But when we're talking about that, you had mentioned a little earlier before we started recording that there are some shifts coming to the platform as it stands, which I want to get into, but it feels like a good place to talk about one of those particular things, which is the regionality of support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was really unexpected for us is when I launched Shine Registry, it was truly just a bunch of Google Docs on a Squarespace site, and the thinking that I had at the time was like, okay, friends and family are going to be the ones who care about the people who are on the site in the version that it is now, and in the version that we have up currently. What we've seen instead is that there's actually a lot of activity with users fulfilling things on multiple registries. I think there are a few reasons for that. I think the fact that we have non-monetary asks makes it so that folks come to the site out of curiosity and realize how easy it is, how easy some of the things you can do to really make a difference for small business owners can be. So they maybe they see that like one of the things that a lot of folks are asking for is just social media engagement, and so they start going to all the profiles of that they're interested in, and it's pretty common for people to ask for network connections. And so if you're someone who's really well connected, particularly in a certain industry, like that also makes a lot of sense for you to go to multiple profiles and be that hero for that set of people. But one of the biggest things has been the regional tags that we added to the site, which currently exists in like a very basic form, but will be souped up quite a bit on our new site, which I'm so excited is knock on wood going to get released pretty soon. We're telling people to stay tuned and keep an eye on when we start making announcements later this fall. But we're building it out so that we're able to do dedicated pages both to regions that have a larger number of registries on the site, as well as other affiliations that folks might have. And so like one to start is that we launched the site in Pittsburgh and did a lot of the early building in Pittsburgh. So we have a very large number of Pittsburgh-based businesses on there. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be a Pittsburgh dedicated page where I know a lot of Yinzers are going to be pretty excited about that. Just to be able to check out like who they can support in that area and in that region.
Well, I have a ton of Main Street folks that will love to connect you with because I think they will resonate with this idea quite a bit. So let's talk a little bit about the process of signing up, either as an entrepreneur, right, and what that looks like, or as an advocate. So what is the process for an entrepreneur? Is there a cost? What do you got to do?
So we are pretty dedicated to keeping the barrier to entry as low as possible for folks who are creating registries. So much of why we're building this is because we want people to feel loved and supported when they're bringing ideas into the world. And so we want to make those tools as available as possible. So just come on the site, sign up. And if you are interested in fulfilling something, just again, like head to the site and click around. I think it's also helpful to follow us on social media and our newsletter, because we like to do highlights of folks there, particularly if we're doing a virtual business shower event. The structure of those is that we host these like fairly regular online workshops, and we use the first 5 and the last 5 minutes to do these quote unquote business showers, where we'll introduce a specific registry profile and walk through the process of fulfilling some of the things that they're asking for, dependent on whose profile it is. But we're trying to make it as easy as possible, and doing what we can to do that. But yeah, what I've been told that it's very, I mean, I'm a little biased. I think it's very fun to fulfill things on people's profiles, but I've been told that other people experience that as well.
Well, my experience is just somebody from the advocate side looking through the registries and kind of seeing the layout. One, it's very easy, which I appreciate. But the other thing is I really enjoy the buckets, right? So the small things, little stuff, big asks. Talk to me a little bit about how you came up with that concept of making sure that there were ways to cut up, even the non-monetary is cut up into essentially small, medium, large. What was the thought process there?
Yeah, we're thinking about a few things in that. One of the things we're thinking about is how much time something might take the person who's fulfilling it. The other factor that we're considering is what kind of circle of a person's network they might need to reach in order to get some of that stuff fulfilled. And so on the back end of that, when someone is setting up a profile, we have some language around this, and we also have some worksheets around thinking through, like, well, if it's a big ask, like you might need to reach outside of your network, you might need to like create a longer relationship with someone. And so you see, like in big asks, people are typically either asking for like larger equipment costs or some sort of like ongoing relationship. Sometimes people use it to seek out partners or things like that. But then with small things and little asks, those things tend to be like the things that you might ask like just the general public to do, and you would feel comfortable asking anyone to do. And so that could be things like, engage with us on social media or share this, like this, write a good review, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's super easy to do. I enjoyed it a lot because it made me feel like I was actually participating.
You are. That's because you are. It's not just an illusion.
Well, that is lovely. It really is kind of straightforward. I appreciate the approach. And then so you get that, and it's kind of like you can check it off and let them know that you're going to fulfill these things. But then also there's the support this project, which is the monetary component, which I imagine is, let me rephrase that. I think that I would have expected that to be the focus, and it really isn't. And I think that speaks to kind of the community that you have built here, is that it is really asking for reasonable help at a non-monetary level before it even considers asking you for money. Was that intentional or just a lovely byproduct of the design you have here?
It might be a little bit of a byproduct of the design. I think when we relaunch, there's going to be a few more avenues for folks to make those monetary asks, because they are pretty important, especially now. But I think that I think it's also really exciting for us what having non-monetary asks on people's profiles does for really increasing that pipeline of engagement. Like I said, I mean, we're pretty confident that that's what leads a lot of advocates to fulfilling things on multiple profiles. We're also really confident that that's what leads to longer term engagement for a lot of folks when they're getting involved, either like really early or at a certain point of business development, or whatever milestone it might be. Doing that first means being on the list longer is kind of the hypothesis we're going off of. And yeah, so for us, it's like whatever way a person can get involved, the better. I mean, I think, capital gets exchanged in a lot of different ways. And we tend to focus on dollars, but I think the emotional labor that is required to bring a new idea into the world, or anything new into the world, could also use some support. And so, I mean, that's why we have pep talks built into
Of
people's
course.
profiles too, or the option to write people pep talks built into people's profiles too.
Which is very cool. And the kind of the action item of like first paying customer, for instance, is one that I'm looking at right now. Is that something that they pick on their own? What is the idea there? So there's 33 actions taken, 14 advocates. It lets me know that it's a retail business based in Pittsburgh, and then there's first paying customer, and that's the one part of it that I'm a little bit like, oh, what are they looking for their first paying customer?
Mm.
Is that what that is supposed to
Oh,
be?
we should clarify that. We'll clarify that in the redesign. So that is, you're looking at a milestone listing. And so one of the things that we were mindful of when starting is like the biggest difference between starting a business and hosting a wedding or a baby shower, or whatever it might be, is that when you have a registry for a wedding or a baby shower, you typically have a one-time event that is also happening that people are contributing towards. When you're starting a business, it's not just a one-time event, right? Like there's
Right.
many milestones that are happening, and there's a need to build support for those milestones, and there's also an opportunity to celebrate each of those milestones. And so we really wanted to focus on the opportunity to celebrate each of those milestones. And so some of the ones that we have listed on the current site include first paying customer, include just launched, growing, just getting started. We are experimenting and playing around with that language a bit, and with what the design looks like. But we don't want Shine Registry to be something that you exclusively use just when you're getting started. We know that there's like a lot of different bumps in the road and also milestones that your community is going to want to be there for you for. So.
And how do people promote this? Is this just something that people take their link and share it around? What is the relationship between you, Emily, and the Shine Registry team and each individual entrepreneur?
Yeah, we're figuring some of that out with these virtual business showers. Like we are doing what we can to leverage the fact that we are growing an audience that's enthusiastic and excited about supporting early stage founders and small businesses, and also like giving people the tools to throw their own virtual business shower and or use their link in ways that are meaningful for them for building community. And so I mean, I think building around business showers has been a really fun and friendly way of doing that. And I think that it's something that we're going to continue doing, but I also think it becomes just like a really easy way for some folks to just like integrate it into things that they're already doing. And so we have users that kind of just include it in their email footer or on their website or in their newsletter as like a, hey, by the way, like this is another way that you can support me. I mean, this all also like goes back to when we first started. It was our origin story kind of comes from a friend of mine having a wedding around the same time as our other friend was starting a business. And truly, like for all the traditions, my friend who was was getting married, hosting a wedding, she was getting married, and she had all these traditions to fall back on that made it really easy for our friend group to show up and care and support her and celebrate her. The friend who was starting a business didn't have any of those tools
Right.
at her disposal, despite having just as much need for that sort of community support. And so, I mean, I think Shine Registry is part of a larger conversation about like, what does it mean to reshape tradition in ways that are tangibly useful for people and meet people where they're at for what they need. And I mean, we're doing this because we want to have more parties. Let's be honest. Like weddings are great. And I love, love, love all the traditions around them. And I love my friends, and I want my friends to feel that level of support, and for it to not be exclusively tied to milestones that happen in their personal lives.
I think it's awesome. Those are my main questions about that. And before we jump into the next topic, is there anything I'm forgetting to ask you about Shine Registry and what's going on?
I think the one thing that might be most relevant to folks listening to this podcast in particular is we are looking for partnerships and building out our partnership program as we get ready to relaunch the site. So depending on when you listen to this, I mean, this we might be at different stages of this, but I would just love for folks to reach out to me if they're interested in working with us, either to get more folks in their region on Shine Registry and really be a part of recovery plans in the next year or so. There are so many ways that small business owners in particular are going to need a lot of support. And, we believe that we are building the tools that are going to be a part of that support system for a lot of small business owners and sole proprietors. And so please reach out to me. Please go to Shine Registry, find out what we're up to, and more importantly, find out what our users are up to, because they are some of the most incredible, interesting, resilient people that I've ever been lucky enough to meet. And I'm so thankful that Shine Registry has given me an excuse to talk to people that are a lot cooler than me.
That is excellent. And also, we'll include all of that contact information, all those links and show notes, and then encourage people to reach out. I think that's going to be a great way to connect, especially with, like you said, a lot of the folks who are in the Main Street and community development world. This could be a very, very fun way to, and a cost-effective way to offer your local businesses a real opportunity to spread the word about themselves and to get some support from around the world, apparently, if you hit the right
Our growing community
your
in
growing
Rwanda
community.
might.
Hey, never discount anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we started this conversation by mentioning our mutual friend Reese, who passed away several years ago now, somehow. Feels like just 5 seconds ago, but he was a prolific human being and maybe one of the most thoughtful and wonderful people. And that is not romanticizing. I mean, I think people romanticize folks sometimes in death, and there is no over-explaining Reese's greatness. And that is how you and I came to meet, along with a decent group of other folks that you worked with at the Roosevelt Institute. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that, but we're going to have a much larger conversation about this in the future. Tell me a little bit about the Roosevelt Institute, just so we can catch up.
Sure. So the Roosevelt Institute and the Roosevelt Institute networks. Well, the Roosevelt Institute includes like the FDR Library, the Roosevelt Institute, which is a progressive policy think tank, and then also Roosevelt Networks. And the networks are how I first met Reese. He was working at the time; it was called the Roosevelt Institute Campus Network, and he was on staff when I was in college. And their function is to work with students and training them on how to write and advocate for public policy issues that they care about and believe in, and truly like write these things and engage with local policymakers to enact them. Which, I mean, you know Reese, so like he's like so perfect for that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was like my first taste of being a part of an organization that took me and my ideas seriously, and also took my ability to involve other people into a larger process more seriously. And so I was able to work with Reese on really like figuring out what it meant to engage with local communities. I went to Mount Holyoke for undergrad, so me and the Mount Holyoke chapter of the Roosevelt Institute worked pretty closely with Holyoke City Council and members of City Hall on organizing an economic development summit. Other folks across the country have done things in pretty wide ranging, either on like local recycling programs or food recovery programs. I mean, there is an element of there's a very bottom up element to the organization. where like when we give young people the tools to fully develop their capacity for expressing and their values and figuring out ways that their values can translate into actionable projects that have real impact. Young people are incredibly capable of doing that, and it really sets people up, I think, for the rest of their lives being incredibly like civically engaged and active, and part of building stronger communities for that. All of which are things that Reese like really just embodied very fully, both as a person who was very good at getting people to think bigger about who they were as individuals and the impact that they could have, as well as the importance of building for the communities that you're a part of, and really being just an integral part of those communities. And so that's how so that's how we met. And I mean, he really like lived that
He did.
while he was at Roosevelt and afterwards in Columbus. Yeah, I miss him a lot.
I know.
I
miss him
could
too.
keep going on and on.
And we should, but let's talk about how quickly this came about. So there's a program called the Forge Fellowship, and Reese had started an organization here in Columbus, Ohio called Forge Columbus. And this Forge Fellowship kind of, man, does it amplify what the idea was of that. And you, amongst many of Reese's friends and family from all across the world, put this thing together, and it's incredible. And it's something that I know he would be insanely proud of, and I know that his parents are deeply proud of the legacy that is able to create in both his name, but also for the country, and for the students that get to participate in this. And so, walk us through a little bit of what the Forge Fellowship is and who it's for.
So for 3 years running now, we have been running the Forge Fellowship program with the Roosevelt Institute, where we've been able to use their staff knowledge and resources to invite and well, it's pretty competitive. They have to apply, but but after an application process, Forge Fellows are selected. I think we've had around 10 a year. I should know that, but let's say around 10 each year. And they've been trained on everything from stakeholder engagement to project development and implementation. And they're given a stipend, as well as a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of support from this group of friends that you've mentioned. There is a core group of us that worked with Reese through Roosevelt and have stayed in touch. And then there's like a larger community of friends of his in Columbus that we have been able to get to know and to learn from, as well as the larger Roosevelt alumni network. And I mean, I think a lot of where this comes from is that Reese was just very good at connecting people. He was incredibly friendly, like threw great parties.
Yeah, unmatched.
Very friendly. And again, like always seeing the potential in people and always seeing that potential is amplified whenever he was able to make the correct connection and to really get people to do things together. I mean, I think he really understood that like we're able to accomplish more when we have this like a support network behind us, and when we are often it was just like being very enthusiastic about a group of people and a whiteboard, but sometimes that's what it takes, right? And so the thing that I think has been incredibly rewarding for me is that through this fellowship, I mean, since his passing, we've been able to expand that network further, which is something that felt really really tragic at the time that he passed, was that like, okay, we're not going to have he's not going to be able to expand this community, but
you did it.
a little bit, and the fellows that we've gotten involved have been truly incredible. And so I like that you did a little bit of teaser. What I would really love is for us to do a separate, and we're going to talk more about this.
Yes.
But I'd really love to bring some of those fellows on to this podcast.
Me too.
And have you meet them and to really celebrate the work that they've done too.
Me too. And seriously, it feels very much in line, which oftentimes things like this can lose sight of the person they're built for. So be very proud. It is something to be very proud of. Oh no, we're both crying. Yay, podcasting. Anyway, he really was a phenomenal human being, and I miss him every day. And everyone should take a second to really look at this, and I will link to this also. But we will have a larger conversation and talk more about it. But when are the applications opening? Do we know if applications are opening back up in the near future?
Not for a bit. The fellowship cycle begins in the summer, and so applications tend to be made available in the spring. I'll probably be sharing this episode then. but if you're listening to this right now in the fall of 2020, sorry, the applications aren't open right now. But like with everything else that I've talked about, like I always love to hear from folks who are excited about this and interested in the work that we're doing. And so there will definitely be, I'll definitely be sharing information with you to share in the notes about how folks can get involved, either with supporting current fellows or with becoming a future fellow, or becoming someone who's supporting future fellows as well.
Very good. Well, I can't think of a better way to end other than to say thank you. It is so lovely to catch up with you, and congratulations on everything you're doing. And I'm excited to have future conversations about our dear friend and about all of the continued work.
Thanks, Jack. It's been really fun.
That's it for this episode. Again, I'm Jack Story, and thanks for listening. If you found this conversation to be worthy of your time, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. Take care and see you next time.